Welcome to Dub Nation, the official show of the Utah Warriors of Major League Rugby. I am Jarom Jordan alongside Banksy, and we've got a new head coach. Greg Cooper is a new coach of the Utah Warriors. Today is a great day. We're at Zions Bank Stadium celebrating that, and we finally know who the guy is.
You want to talk about incredible news for Dub Nation, a guy with this kind of pedigree as a former All Black, as a coach at the Highlanders, Stade Francais in Japan, with the dynamic boars, the Dynaboars, I think they call them.
Yes.
It's an incredible pedigree that coach brings, but an incredible work ethic too. So an incredible hire for this entire organization.
You got to love Dynaboars. You just have to. We're on the Utah Warriors Facebook, Twitter, YouTube account. Subscribe to the podcast version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Here's what's on the show today. Who is Greg Cooper? Banksy told you a little bit. We'll tell you a little more in a sec. We're going to talk to the new head coach as well, the former All Black. Warriors with the Eagles, all MLR teams, Warriors with the USA U20s, and we'll talk to Brandon Sparks, the general manager of the Utah Warriors, about this hire, a little bit about the Major League Rugby draft as well. Okay, let's talk about it. Who is Greg Cooper? 57-year-old Kiwi, played fullback for the All Blacks, played for the Blues, he's coached in New Zealand for the Highlanders, as you mentioned, in Paris, in Japan, and now he becomes the fourth head coach of the Utah Warriors. Brandon Sparks, we're going to talk to him later about this, but he didn't think this was real when his resume was sent over by his agent. Like, he's got so much experience. Kimball Kerr mentioned that he's the most experienced coach in Major League Rugby now. This feels like a home run. What do you think?
When you get somebody that's played and coached with some absolute legends of the game, 8 caps for the All Blacks, played under Laurie Maines, played under Sir Brian Lahore, when you talk about a club with the profile that Stade Francais has, he played in that transitional phase from amateur to professional. So he has all of the experience to be able to captain a ship like the Utah Warriors that's weathering the storm and growing pains that Major League Rugby is going to have going into its 6th season.
And he said he didn't want to come here and just dictate what's happening. He wants to learn as well. But he certainly could if he wanted to, because he's got experience. And in Japan, it wasn't the top flight initially. He was in the 2nd division, helped them get to the 1st division. This is an opportunity that he said was a great fit for him as well. And we'll talk to Greg Cooper coming up. But it just seems like the right guy for the right time. And that matters. Obviously, we need games to be played. But initially, it's like, this feels like a fantastic hire because this team was on the cusp last year, despite being 5-11.
When you want somebody that's going to say all the things out of the box that you want to hear from a head coach, right? I'm here to learn. I'm here to make adjustments. I'm not here to wipe the slate clean. This team isn't broken. It just needs to be adjusted, not fixed, with a core group of players. And that understated Kiwi sensibility that a lot of New Zealanders have. He's from the South Island, down at Invercargill, blue-collar guy from, a family that is just rooted in tradition and history in the game of rugby all over the country. So a special man for a special time, for sure.
Where do you think his focus needs to be initially and sort of what's next?
I think really for him, out of the box, it's just going to be analysis. When you look at a chessboard, what is each individual piece's job? How are they performing at that job? And how can I help them improve at that? And if they can't live up to the expectations, then what's next? Do we have to remove them and replace them? Who's available to bring in? So really there's a lot of soul searching and analysis that has to go on for what's next for a lot of these different moving pieces.
Okay, coming up, we'll talk to the new head coach, Greg Cooper. We'll also talk to Brandon Sparks, and we'll talk about USA and Chile. Hey! Didn't go like we wanted, but there's still a chance to make the World Cup. We'll tell you about that coming up in a bit. But, hey, new head coach, now's the time to get the tickets for next year.
Look, Dub Nation, if you're ready, 2023 season tickets are available now, all right? Get your kit, get your season tickets, get your seats all staked out because 2023 is going to be an absolute blockbuster. Don't miss it. Go to warriorsrugby.com or call the number and get your season tickets for the 2023 Major League Rugby season to see your Utah Warriors in action.
We now welcome to Dub Nation for the first time, the first of many visits, Greg Cooper, the new head coach of the Utah Warriors. Welcome to the program. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What have the last weeks, months been like as this process has gone through to finally be named the head coach of the Warriors?
Oh, I think it's been quite a thorough process, to be honest. And I think that the good thing about that is it's given me an opportunity to understand a lot more about the Warriors, understand a lot about Utah as well. And I think obviously the local people understanding me in terms of the decision makers understanding me. So arriving at this point, it's been thorough, but certainly it's been an enjoyable process.
So you wrap up your contract in Japan. You're trying to think about what's next. Where and how does Utah get on your radar at all?
Look, I think a good question actually. The thing about it is, I have coached in New Zealand, and I've coached in France, and I've coached in Japan a lot. And I was at that point where I was thinking, I actually need another challenge. And the idea of the MLR and the development in the MLR, and obviously the Rugby World Cup is really a catalyst, or certainly is a catalyst for me. And looking at organisations, MLR teams in America, this team here, to me, I think it's a sleeping giant. I really do believe that. I think the results probably didn't reflect the ability in this team, and I think there is a great opportunity. And on top of that, reading about it, understanding it, Utah's a cool place. So
don't tell anybody. Secret will get out.
Don't tell the California.
No, it's seriously it's obviously growing up in New Zealand, about Utah. You watch television, about it. But it's when you start try to understand a little bit more about it. You're like, this is cool.
Okay, so on the field, you've mentioned in the press conference and other places, hey, this team wasn't far from being really good. And then the World Cup, you said, influenced you. So you feel like you can come into a situation that's a sleeping giant, and that this team isn't that far away from great success?
Yeah, hopefully I'm reflecting back on that as a fact. But no, 100%, I do. I think this team is very, very close. I think the quality of the individuals as players is high. I think the character is really strong. I think there's a lot of courage in this side. And I just think, I believe, and I have to believe in myself here, I'm going to come here and utilise the experience that I've got. But first and foremost, understand. I've got to really understand the people. I've got to understand the coaching. And then I've got to say, right, what can I do to add value here? So I'm not coming in here saying, hey, look, we're changing everything here. I'm coming, let's learn, let's me understand, then see what I can do.
And with that said, you mentioned in the press conference as well, I come with experience. Where will that manifest itself the most, you think, in your impact on this team?
I think probably a couple, really. I think the organisational planning skills that I've been able to develop over the years, because I think when you plan well, you execute well. So it doesn't come the other way. You don't execute first, you plan. So getting the planning right, getting the planning of the people, and I'm talking like the coaching staff and helping with the performance staff. So getting the planning right first, because once you've got a plan, once you've got a blueprint, and everyone believes in that plan and that blueprint, you move forward. Yes, you make mistakes along the way, but so long as the blueprint is strong, then it's a correction. It's not, it's not a change of direction. So the direction we'll be going the same direction, but we might be making corrections along the way. So that's the first and foremost. But obviously the practical side of it, in terms of the rugby coaching. I've done a lot of coaching and a lot of, attack coach, defence coach, contact coach, kicking coach. So I've done a lot of that. So, I'm hoping to add that value there as well.
So you mentioned some of the players. I got a chance to talk to some of the boys who are really excited about someone of your caliber coming in. How much interaction have you had with the guys on the squad who are still in town, and what's their reaction been like?
Not a huge amount yet, and obviously Lance was there, Paul was there, and I've spoken with Lance on the phone. I've had some nice messages from some of the players as well. I had an introduction to the players late last week, I think it was, where we just had a Zoom call. But no, I'm going to make a point of, there's a number I want to talk to going forward. But I enjoy that, just getting to know them and making sure they get to know me as well. So I just need to know them as people first. I sort of understand them a lot as rugby players because I've actually been looking at their games. So I understand them as rugby players. I just want to understand them more as people. And then once they know me, once I know them, then we can focus more on the rugby.
How much of the viewing of those games was to see if you wanted to come here at all versus, no, I want to go there. Now I'm assessing what we need to work on.
Yeah, no, I looked at it and it got me straight away. I thought, this team's good. This team's actually a good team. There were moments of excellence. There was moments where there was a lapse, but I saw that. That's not entirely, hey, definitely coming here. I obviously needed to speak with other people in the organisation, and that got me as well. There's a really strong There's a really strong structure and foundations off the field here. And that's important because, we are talking 5 years, going into the 6th year of the MLR. And I'm surprised. I was surprised here at how organised they were off the field. So that got me. But the rugby, I saw the rugby and I saw potential. Because, look, I'm not afraid to take up a challenge. But I saw there's a lot of good work already being done.
So coming from some of that off-field adjustment, obviously your playing time, you played a lot of fullback. By the way, shouts out Otago Rugby, highest point scorer in the history of the provincial rugby, right, for Otago?
We took a lot of kicks then.
Yeah.
We took a lot of kicks. There was a lot of penalties. It was really slow. I just had shots of goal.
I remember watching those days. I love that old school brand of rugby. But coming from your playing days and then to be able to almost get that master class under someone like Laurie Mains, who has that pedigree that he had with the national team in New Zealand, and then developing your own style, how much has that influenced you from that kind of old school way of doing things to a very modern game in the way that we approach the almost sports science of rugby now, rather than just, putting your boots on and playing the game?
It's actually really good. There's sports science, there's the art and there's the science. And I think that's the beauty about rugby coaching. And going back to, a guy like Laurie Mains, obviously coached with him as well in the Highlanders. Some other great coaches. My first All Black coach was Sir Brian Lahore. Possibly not the most technical coach, but incredible leader. And John Hart was probably ahead of his time. And, so there's been some great coaches that I've had and coaches that I've coached with. So I'm who I am. And I've got to be who I am, but I've got to use all those experience and get a bit. I've never had a mentor. I've had lots of people I've looked at and taken bits and pieces of. And the other thing about it is rugby is changing. So while it changes, I've got to change with it. I've got to understand the new age player. But there are some non-negotiables in rugby, but there's also a lot of give. So while there'll be some things in rugby that's non-negotiable, there's a lot of give as well. And I think that's part of me growing with the rugby environment.
How quickly do you feel like you have to flesh out the assistant coaches and the staff to support you?
Oh, look, there's some really strong coaches here now, and it's for me. I'm meeting with Sean tomorrow. I'm meeting with Robbie next week, and I've already been in discussions with them. Look, the staff here are really high qualified staff. So my job is not to go in there and say, right, we're doing this, we're changing it. I'm not doing that. The core of coaching group and etc. That's solid. So it's more about saying, okay, now how can I help grow them, and how can I fit in with them? So I'm very much, it's a sharing of ideas. Ultimately, I have to make the final call, and I happily do that, but I also need to understand. I've got some valuable information out of listening to coaches in the past.
So how was it received when you told the family that you were moving to America to coach rugby? How was rugby received everywhere else, because it's a new sport to us here, and it's always been kind of America, the sleeping giant, right?
Yeah. Look, I'm excited, really, really excited, because it is you talk about sleeping giant, and that's a term that's been used out there all the time. Look, I think the giant's awakening, and for me, my part of my responsibility, and I see it as a responsibility, is to ensure that there's an upward path now. And absolutely, the family, the immediate family, the greater family, the friends who I've had discussions with, they've all said, what a great opportunity.
Hey, and you've got a spot up in the mountains for them to come visit. I mean, this is a good spot for them to come see, right?
I have skied very, very badly. My son is a very good skier. Actually, my kids, they're all good skiers. Well, I say good, a lot better than I am. So, no, it is. It's beautiful. It sort of reminds me a little bit of central Otago back in New Zealand in the Queenstown area, where you've got the mountains, the ski fields, and there's lakes there as well. And obviously, it's on a grander scale here, but it is beautiful.
There's no whitebait here, though, unfortunately.
There's no.
Let's talk about the fancy backs that you mentioned. Mikey Teo and Mika Kruse, certainly contracts have to be figured out for certain guys. But 2 years ago, these guys were incredible. Last year wasn't quite as dynamic. How do the fancy backs get used the most effectively in your style of coaching?
I'm not going to live that down, am I?
I like the phrase.
Yeah.
Like
No, well, we've always been, all the forwards have always called us backs, the fancy backs. So, I think the important thing is, rugby is about doing the basics right, making it simple. Simple becomes exciting. Complicated becomes confusing. So if we do the simple things right, and we do it in a dynamic way, then the fancy backs, they come into play. But it's not just that. We've got to actually provide the weaponry for them as well. They've got the natural weaponry. There's some great athletes you mentioned, some great athletes there. But the game strategy, game plan, and the development of skills, that comes into play. But you don't go and develop the skills and the strategy and that, and don't actually do the work up front first. We've got to do the work up front.
I should have said Joe Mono first, probably. 7 tries in 7
yeah,
games.
Look,
that was crazy.
Exactly. Some of the stuff that I saw Joe doing this year was exceptional.
When you talk about 7 games that were decided by a converted try or less for this team, that's got to be exciting as a coach, knowing that subtle shifts in momentum and energy and focus really change the outcome of this season. So what's one thing right now that you can say that's absolutely a positive for this team, and what's something that you would like to see changed pretty early on in your tenure here as the Utah Warriors head coach?
I think the obvious one to me is there's courage in this side. There is real courage, and it was a difficult season, but there was a lot of courage shown at the end. And I think for me, courage is not something you can buy and sell. And I think this team has courage, and I think this team enjoys the fight. I think the one thing I'd like to see is you've just hit the nail on the head. Those close games. How do we win those close games? And as I go back to keeping it simple, keeping it easy to understand, and making sure we're in that fight for so that we're not going away from the fight. We're staying in that fight, and that takes away a lot of the pressure when you're keeping it simple. I would hope that I believe we will turn those close games into close wins. And I think I mentioned in the press conference here, those close wins you get confident. Once you get confidence, you get momentum. Once we get that, that's when we start going places.
This place is pretty special in terms of the reaction to the community. You talked about that as well. 8 of the top 10 crowds in the league were from here. Yeah. What does it mean to you to come to a place where there's already a strong rugby presence that you can continue to tap in at a higher level?
That is really exciting, because I think you've just mentioned there, rugby, is relatively new, and the sleeping giants and that, but it's not like that here. It's different here. So that's the exciting thing. I'm hoping that and when we start getting that real growth in the success, then the players feel really good about it being on the street. Wearing this gear, and people recognise them, and the community feel good about it. So it's not just a team and a community; it's a community, which is the team. So that's the exciting thing. The teams that have this great feel about it is about community, and I believe we've already got a head start here. Just grow on it.
So let's reach out into that pathway program then. We mentioned already somebody like Joe Mono. We see guys like Saya Uhila, Tomasi Tonga, who have all come up already through the pathway program. What's the next step that you see with your experience, obviously, from New Zealand and that club atmosphere that you and I kind of talked about off camera, that very familiar community? How do you grow that now in that pathway system to keep our community tight and let those players know they have a home here and they have a real place to grow and continue to excel as rugby players?
Well, first of all, the systems need to be in place for that. I'll answer it in a different way. The shop window, the Utah Warriors, we've got to get it right. We've got to make it aspirational. We've got to. These young ones have got to see that and say, this is pretty cool, and we want to be there. So let's get that shop window right. Let's make sure we are successful at that end. But in the meantime, we've got to be doing the work at the other end as well, because there's no point in making it aspirational, but there's no pathway. So we've got to work on that pathway at that youth level. So I know there's some good work being done there. We are going to continue to increase that work there, but I see it as a responsibility to make those young ones look up to the Warriors and say, I actually want to be there. Because once you get that hunger, then you'll work a bit harder so long as there's a pathway.
What do the next couple of months look like as you try and finish the staff, finish the roster? Eventually we'll have the kits and the schedule and so on.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is about scheduling in terms of. I go back to that planning there before. If we get that plan right and everyone understands, this is what we're doing in this month. There's a lot of planning going up. In terms of the game planning, in terms of what we want to do. So understanding what does our attack look like? What does our development in our attack? What does our defence look like? All of the development of those areas there, our set piece. How do we bring that in, and how do we deliver that? So to me, it's a lot of planning. So that for me, it's when day one, when the players arrive, they are pretty clear on what's going on. It's not, I call it an orientation day, so it'll be a Warriors orientation day, that we arrive on day one, these players will know what the game plan probably looks like already, in a broad sense, and so we don't start on day one, we start well before that. So the planning is going to be crucial.
I know a big part of that's got to be your relationship with Brandon Sparks and what he brings to the table from that organizational standpoint. How's that relationship been with Sparksy? And obviously started with the contract negotiations and getting you here. Now, what does that relationship look like as you guys go forward, where he's been such an integral part of kind of holding everything together in the interim?
Yeah, I've been involved with a lot of general managers in the past, and Brandon's been exceptional right from day one. It was, we had our discussion, and then it goes to the next discussion. But he made it very clear and how what he was looking for, and it probably allowed me the opportunity to actually just be myself, because I didn't want to present anything other than who I am, and I wanted to be here, and there was a pathway in our discussions, and there was an openness in there. I knew that it was a big search, and I knew that I didn't have the job, but I knew that I could be myself, and that's the only way I wanted it to be. So, and then since then, it's been, we've been working really, really closely together. So going forward, I'm really excited about that, because, my job, I see a big responsibility out there from what I do, and I'm a part of it. I'm at the coalface, and people like Brandon, I have a responsibility to Brandon. I have a responsibility to Kimball. I have a responsibility to all of the organisation. I have a responsibility to the fans, the players. So I feel as though there's a responsibility, but it's easy to have a responsibility when you feel good about the people you're working with.
Brandon said that he made a list of 16 things he wanted to check off, and you checked off 14.
I'm trying to find
kind of messed up there, too, unchecked, right?
I don't know. He should have said that, because all I'm doing is focusing on the other two at the moment. I don't know
what they are they? Is that not tall enough? What happened?
I don't know. I don't know what they are.
I don't know that he'll ever tell us either, Coach,
he won't.
unfortunately.
Well, we'll ask him in a minute.
Yeah.
I doubt he'll tell us, but that was fun. Well, and let's get. Do you go by Coops?
Yeah,
is that a thing?
Do.
What would you like?
I do. No. I've always been Coops. So in fact, I think my kids are everyone's Coops. So my brother's Coops. I've been in rooms where there's been a Coops and there's about 3 heads have turned around. I'm Coops.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time. We're going to chat a ton. This was the first of many, and we're very excited to have you. Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you. Yeah, no, really, really pleased to be here. Excited. Looking forward to getting into it.
The end of year merch is on sale now. Go to shop.warriorsrugby.com. Get the home kit, get the away kit, get the special edition Cottonwood Canyon jersey kit. It's all available now to make sure you look as good as you can to support Dub Nation in the 4 stripes, in the red and black at Zions Bank Stadium for the 2023 Major League Rugby season. So shop online now and get huge discounts on end of year merchandise.
We now welcome into Dub Nation the general manager of the Utah Warriors, Brandon Sparks. Brandon, congratulations on hiring a new head coach. I'm sure that was a big process to get the right guy and the right fit.
Yeah, it was about a 4-month long process, but we nailed it down and we got the right guy for the job.
So talk about getting Coop's resume, and you've told me this story off camera, and it's so funny. The reactions that you get when someone like this becomes available, you've got to tell the story to Dub Nation.
Yeah, I mean, first off, like the quality of coaches that we're getting with the resumes was quite impressive. It was probably through the hiring cycle for the MLR the highest caliber coaching seen at any time in the 5-year history. But I've known kind of about Greg on the peripherals as a coach, and when the agent sent me the resume, I kind of paused for a second and I just texted back, "You meant to send this to me, right?" And and he was like, yeah, of course I did. And I was like, oh yeah, totally, I totally knew that. And So that kind of kickstarted the whole process. But yeah, like I said, for a caliber of coach like him with the experience that he offers, he's going to bring a lot of value, not just to the MLR and the Utah Warriors, but to the rugby community as a whole, because he gets the vision of what we're trying to do here with the developmental focus mindset.
And he seems like he has it dialed in. Obviously, he's watched matches. He understands what happened last season in terms of how close this team was, some of the differences. He's been pretty impressive to know he knows what this team's about.
Yeah, like when we started the interviewing process, he knew the structure. He knew who Kimball was. He knew who Nick was. He knew the key players. And
did he know who you were?
He did know
okay,
who I was. He had to. He had to at least. He ignored the first 2 emails, but he made it. He eventually figured out who I was. But yeah, like he knew the spine of the team. But then as the season went along, we communicated a little bit more frequently. It wasn't like an interviewing process. It was just like, two guys that like rugby and being like, oh, did you see that? Yeah, how about this? So yeah, he did his homework. The nice thing too is that like he's pretty analytically focused, but more excitingly, he wants to be more involved with that and push the boundaries of like what we're trying to do here as an organization. So yeah, he's a great fit, and he's going to be a welcome addition here.
Was there a point where you knew that Coops was the guy over the other candidates?
Yeah, as it got down to it, and we were talking about the challenges of the MLR. Things with sometimes more established coaches, they can kind of view America as either like a stepping stone or an opportunity to kind of go there and maybe coast into the sunset type of thing, where that definitely wasn't the case with him. He saw the value of what this league could be, wanted to be a part of the story of the Utah Warriors and the MLR, and he just bought in. Like you could see that he really bought in, and like didn't just give us like a token. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's exactly what we do. He was in all the way and had a plan and added to the plans that we had, and it just improved everything by like 10%.
10% is a good chunk.
Yeah.
1% would do, right?
Yeah.
10% is massive.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned this list of 16. You checked 14 of the 16. What were the other two, Brandon?
Well, I'm fairly certain I could beat him in a foot race, so that was one thing. I wanted to make sure foot speed was okay. And believe it or not, I'm not sure that he would be able to handle the pressure of the scrum in the hooker position. So those were the.
There you go. As a former fullback,
It's
yes,
fair.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Completely
yeah,
fair
yeah.
assessment. If
Yeah.
you've never played in the front row, it's a tough thing to manage.
No, like the two were pretty trivial. The two were pretty trivial, and it was only the two that were put on there to keep it a round number because I was a little uncomfortable with an odd number.
So it was more about your OCD.
It was more about my
than
it was
any
more
kind of
me thing than it was
significant,
him.
measurable impact.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. All right.
There you go. That's the secret behind it.
I do
That's the secret
think
to
being
sauce,
able to
folks.
hold up a scrum, no matter
Yeah.
what position you play,
Yes.
should be a prerequisite
I
for playing the
agree.
game.
Yeah, Jaron,
Wow.
Guess what's coming? Guess who's coming out to training with
well,
us?
plus
next
I'm
season?
getting Gandalf and Bilbo over here in the middle. Jeez.
If Jarom can hold up the scrum at tight head prop, we'll renew your contract
Yeah,
for
yeah,
another
there you
year.
go. There
That's
you
that's
go.
all there
No
is to
pressure.
it. I know I could do
I'm
it.
updating my LinkedIn as we speak. Hold on just a second. So the next couple of months, obviously, there's a lot to do. You got the draft, you've got the roster, you've got the staff. What's kind of priority number one right now that you have the head coach?
With the head coach, it's kind of continuing the audit of the roster and what we want to do. The nice thing is a lot of the pieces will be returning, and we're actually further ahead than we ever have been in the years that I've been here with re-signings and signings. We've added a couple of pretty big pieces that will be exciting to debut during our roster reveal show near the end of the year.
It's a big show for us.
It is
It's
teaser,
huge, yeah.
teaser. So put that
nice.
in your calendar. So yeah, it's just kind of figuring that out. Really, at this point, it's going to be up to me to kind of run interference and clear obstacles out of the way for Greg, Robbie, and Sean to make sure they're as successful as possible.
Now, you kind of allude to that, saying those three names together. Is that something that they're working for and keeping as many of these pieces in place as we can? Did you kind of leak a little tea there?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I believe that Sean is an international caliber coach. I believe that Robbie is an international caliber coach as well too. That was one of the big things for me was I felt the guts of this team, like it was there. The core was there. The coaches, I believe, were there. They need maybe a little bit more development, a little bit more refinement to make them as successful as I believe that they can be. And through the interviewing process, it was as close to a non-negotiable as I am comfortable saying that those two be included in the future plans of the Utah Warriors. Because I have a lot of belief in all of them. I believe that, in a few years, if they don't become head coaches here, they'll go on to be head coaches somewhere else. And then, within the next 15 to 20 years, we'll see them at the international stage doing some pretty exciting and innovative things when it relates to the game of rugby.
And anybody that watched the back half of the Warriors season knows that's a fact. Those guys were absolute legends in the way that they led this team.
Yes, very true.
I'm thinking of Austin and ATL and the LA game minus the cards. And which was hilarious that Greg was like, there were cards in that game.
Yeah. Guys, I thought it was in my safe space. I thought it was in my safe space. Why are we going to bring up triggers? Yeah, we're going to bring up triggers. Yeah.
No names shall be mentioned at this point. The Major League Rugby draft is August 18th, little less than a month away. What else, in terms of preparation, do you and the staff need to do to be ready for that, to try and find the next crop? Because you started 2 of the 3 picks, several games last season.
Yeah, all 3 picks played this year, as well as Elijah Hayes finally got his first cap as well too. As I alluded to in the press conference, we learned some tough lessons in year 1 with how to handle a draft process. We refined that in year 2, but there were still some weaknesses there that we've kind of improved on. Credit needs to be given to Nick Colling. Like, he went out there and we had a discussion one night in the Buffalo Wild Wings in Nowhereville, St. Charles, Missouri. It's a lovely place. But
I got to throw Lindenwood under
I didn't throw Lindenwood. I just said it it's a great place.
If anybody's ever been to St. Charles, Missouri, I'm speaking the truth, all right?
Yeah. There's a great barbecue shop there. But yeah, with the CRS, it gave us unprecedented access to these players, and we learned a lot of things that I don't believe a combine format would allow for. We got to see how they operated as professionals. We got to see how they operated as players, what the readiness looked like. There was guys like Nate Curtis, who I know you guys interviewed. He went in there as essentially a nobody and left there with a lot of interest and generated a lot of interest for himself. Devin Rivet, who was the wing on the Canyons, he was immediately invited into the Sevens camp. So that grouping of players inside that CRS, has allowed us to be way ahead of what we thought we would be right now with the talent recruitment leading up to the draft. And then the other thing with the draft too is we want to future-proof the team. We don't want to force these guys into becoming starters and contributing immediately and right away. We want to give them kind of a growth plan. It'd be great if we do get an out-of-the-box player that's ready to go, but if we're honest, from the collegiate level to the MLR, that gap is only growing year by year with the talent as it relates to talent. So we're going to bring some P guys in that in the next 2 to 3 years you'll start to see become stalwarts. If we're honest, there's likely going to be a fairly big turnover inside the league starting this year, but then as we finish up in the World Cup next year, it'll be even greater. So, again, I said it in the press conference, we never want to rebuild, we want to reload, and it starts with this draft class right now.
Well, exciting times. You got the coach, now you're working on the assistants, which you keyed us into that process, and then the draft. So thanks for the time and best of luck the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, thank you.
Experience what everyone is talking about. The non-stop, action-packed, and fan-favorite sport of Utah. Warriors Rugby.
Oh, what a hit!
Experience Utah's most exciting professional sport with group nights and single game and season tickets available.
That's a great scrum from the Warriors.
Renew your season tickets for the 2023 season now with 8 games starting as low as $99. Visit warriorsrugby.com for details.
All right, let's talk about the Utah Warriors with the USA Eagles. Both Paul Mullen and Angus McClellan were on both the games in Santiago and in Glendale, Colorado. The United States won 2 weeks ago by a single point in a deluge in Santiago. So all they needed to do was win by any amount in Glendale. Unfortunately, Chile wins by 2 and gets the Rugby World Cup bid there. Bid not done. That opportunity isn't done for the U.S., but disappointing result. But our guys played pretty well. Both tight head props from the Warriors. But now the Eagles have some work to do.
There's a lot of work to do if you're a Eagles fan and you want to see this team, which of course we want to see this team make the World Cup. Now they have to qualify in the last chance reap change tournament. which I think they will do when you look at the quality of the competition that they have and the
Portugal, Kenya, and then Tonga or Hong Kong. They got to play it out.
the time now that this team has been together to continue to build on that chemistry. We saw a lot of really good things work for this team. Obviously, having Gus and Paul in there at tight head prop, really great for Dub Nation to see. We've been saying it here all along that these are easily the best two tight head props in the country that are available. Great to see them both get selected. But, there's a lot of work to do to tighten up and correct some of the little mistakes, control the things that you can control, and then go into this last chance qualifier with a bit of momentum and confidence.
Got to win that tournament in November to make the Rugby World Cup. So best of luck to the Eagles. I'm sure we'll be watching and informing what's going on as we lead up to that. Major League Rugby came out with the all MLR teams. Just one Warrior on them. Felt like maybe there'd be a couple more. Lance Williams is the blindside flanker, the best one in the league, as determined by the league.
Considering he played 6 games at number 8, to get the nod at blindside flanker really is a credit to how well he played and how far he's come as a rugby player, mentally and athletically. He just keeps making incredible play after incredible play for Dub Nation. He's a fantastic fan favorite and a part of the community here in Utah. So all the credit in the world goes to Lance and his work ethic for that nomination.
5 tries in his 5th season, had over 1,000 meters, running 173 tackles. It was an awesome year for Lance Williams. So congrats to Lance. USA U20s went to Amsterdam. There was some Utah Warriors involvement there. Ali Khalifi, one of the loosehead props for the Warriors, and he was an assistant coach on that team, obviously with Slex as a coach as well here. Sake Tukuafu, who's been on the show, he was awesome. He was on that team, and Caden Siddle are both in the pipeline for the Warriors. And they won all 3 games they played over there.
And a fantastic building block. When we talk about the pipeline, and specifically the pipeline that we have here in Utah, when we want to be the epicenter of rugby in America, to see these quality players and now coaches with the development of Ali Khalifi behind the clipboard, incredible things in our future now here for the Utah Warriors, and not just the players in the pipeline, but the development of that brain trust that can continue to give back to the club.
We didn't realize it was a coaching pathway as well. We were thinking just player, but yeah, coaching pathway. Okay, let's look ahead at what's going on with Major League Rugby and the Warriors. August 18th, as we mentioned a couple of times here, the MLR draft. That's going to be really important for this team because the Warriors, I think more than most teams in MLR, value getting young talent, developing them, giving them a chance. We saw Emerson Pryor and Connor Burns and Joey Backey play a lot. In particular, the first 2 I mentioned, who started a ton. It's not, and Brandon Sparks mentioned to us as well, we'd prefer if they don't have to and we can develop them. Elijah Hayes being a good example of that, kind of 2-year lead up to this next season. This is a big deal for the Warriors, who have done a nice job of evaluating talent.
Well, and I think it's a different approach than what a lot of NFL teams, for example, would use going into the draft, where you evaluate your needs and then say who's the best player available. Right now, with the talent gap between the level of rugby being played in college as opposed to the level of rugby being played in MLR, you have to look to see who's going to have the best tools to help them progress to the next level. Not necessarily who the most dynamic players at those positions are right now. And then, like Elijah Hayes, who has a huge upside, who was given the 2 years not only just to change physically, but to develop, to learn, and understand the systems that he's playing in. And clearly, it's working for the Utah Warriors.
Absolutely. He's going to be a beast. Can't wait to watch him wearing a Warriors jersey. So assistant coaches still need to be figured out, as we talked about, although Brandon Sparks essentially told us they really want Sean Davies and Robbie Abel to come back, which is a bit of a surprise, by the way. Typically, the new head coach has his guys, but they really want those 2 who did a nice job at the end of the season in coaching this group. I would love for those 2 to come back.
Well, I think that's just a credit to their quality and the job that they did, right? I mean, the connection between Robbie Abel and playing with the New Zealand Māori and Kupi, with his connection to rugby in New Zealand, there's got to be a level of respect and understanding between what they're trying to develop. And then what Sean Davies has been able to do with this backline play and developing the 9s that we've had, that, when you talk about guys like Michael Baska, when you talk about Niall Saunders through this last year and all of the other players that continue to rise and shine under his coaching, that's a guy you want to keep in your system.
100%. If you're like, hey, can we keep the scrum half who started for the U.S. in the World Cup on the staff? Yes is the answer. A guy who's played in this league, and obviously a guy beloved in the community from his days at BYU. Okay, and then new player signings. That'll be later in the year. But there's some exciting times ahead for the Utah Warriors, and it kicked off with the hiring of new head coach Greg Cooper. So that will do it for us. Thanks for joining us on this remote edition of Dub Nation at Zions Bank Stadium. For Coach Greg Cooper and General Manager Brandon Sparks and Banksy and myself and Mason and Hunter and Billy and our whole production staff, that'll do it for us. Go Warriors!